I'm 33 years old, and in this video, I'm going to be breaking down my exact net worth as somebody who was a little bit late to the personal finance game, has over $30,000 in debt, and who is self-employed. I've been aggressively paying off tax debt for about 3 years. My industry did really well at the beginning of the pandemic, and I took that extra income and basically just blew it on material items. I made bad financial decisions, and I didn't save for my taxes. And then after the pandemic, my industry took a serious nosedive. So I've been paying off tax debt that is more than I currently make in a year. I'm slowly getting out of debt, and I hope to be debt free in about 2 years. I'm also not currently investing, but I have invested in the past. But I'll get into all of that in this video. With all of that in mind, as of today, my net worth is $92,655.89. So let's break that down. So starting with cash and assets, I basically sold all of my assets when I was paying off debt. I had a ton of designer stuff that I never should have bought. So I kind of feel like this stuff could have been counted as assets before I sold it. I had things like a Birkin bag, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Cartier, all of these things that just like put me into consumer debt and I never should have bought. I currently have no cash savings, no emergency funds. I just paid $6,000 for my taxes, and in my checking account right now, I have about $2,600, and that is my rent for the coming month and one of my debt payments that's automatically withdrawn. So, in terms of cash and assets, I would say I would count $2,600, even though that will be taken out at the end of the month. And then, if we get into my investments, I wish I started investing sooner. I feel like speaking to my younger brother who is 19, I really sound like that like weird uncle at Thanksgiving who is like, just start investing, just put $20, like put whatever you can, just start investing when you're young. And I feel like young people never listen to that advice, but now that I'm trying to give it as like don't make my mistakes, I really feel like nobody listens. Like unless you get it and like you've made that decision on your own to start investing, I feel like nobody can influence you, kind of. Like people told me to invest and I was like, okay, boomer. Like you never listen to them, but like I wish I had have listened to that advice and I wish I started investing sooner. So with that in mind, I guess we'll go smallest to largest. So I recently discovered that I have about $1,200 in a Starbucks Fidelity account. So I was a Starbucks barista for my last year of high school and first 2 years of university. And I knew that I had something called a Beanstalk plan, but I was so young, I just didn't really pay attention to it. And this should serve as a PSA for anyone that worked at Starbucks, even if it was only for a year in high school or whatever. I recently just bit the bullet and decided to call Fidelity and see if I had anything in the Beanstalk plan. And I think it was like 8 stocks and like some cash as well. And it totaled $1,200. So I'm actually planning on taking that out and putting it towards my debt. But for now, we'll count it. And then next up, I have a random Tangerine account. When I first got interested or like thought that I should be investing, I feel like I was pretty young and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I opened a Tangerine account. I feel like they were trendy like maybe a decade ago, and I started investing like not very much in that, and today it has $1,486.89. And then next up is my Questrade account. So I think I opened this like halfway through the pandemic and just decided to put some money in, classic ETFs. And right now there is $15,562.42 in there. And then the biggest account that I have is an RRSP account that is managed, and it has $104,280.45. And that is a combination of an RRSP that is managed and a locked-in retirement account that I had from my first office job. So the locked-in retirement account has about $13,000, and then the rest is in the RRSP. As soon as my debt is paid off, and I will get into the debt later, I actually want to take the money out of that account and put it into my Equestrate account because I feel like I've learned enough about self-directed investing that I'm comfortable handling that money on my own. And I also feel like there are fees associated with it that I'm not exactly sure of. So basically, I started that account because a friend of a friend was a financial advisor and I didn't really know anything about finances at the time. I think I opened this account probably about 6 or 7 years ago now, but I would prefer to manage my investments on my own. So as soon as I'm out of debt, I'm going to look into transferring that money from the account that it's in to the self-directed Questrade account that I have. So in total, my investments come up to around, not around actually, it's exactly $122,529.80 as of today, which I'm very proud of. Honestly, as I said, I haven't invested in like 3 years. I did take out an RRSP loan, which I will start talking about when I get to my debt and liabilities. But I did take out an RRSP loan when I first started working with the financial advisor when I was making like double what I'm making now. And even though that debt has followed me, I still kind of feel like it's okay because it was invested like 6 years ago at this point. So, moving on to my debt and liabilities, like I said, I fell into a lot of tax debt. When my business was really good, I was making like 150,000 a year, I would say. And now I make about 60,000. So paying off the debt that I owe on 150,000 as my income has gotten gradually lower has been a real challenge. And it wasn't just tax debt. I also had student loans. So I had about $40,000 from my undergraduate degree that I was paying off and about 15,000 from my master's degree that I just finished paying off. I also recently took on a lot of moving debt. So if you've seen my other videos, I've mentioned that I was deported from Turkey. I was living in Istanbul and I had the digital nomad visa, but unfortunately, the visa was not renewed and it was a very last minute kind of thing. There were lawyers involved, and I ended up having to move very quickly from Turkey back to Canada. And that was quite expensive. So, my current debt is a combination of lines of credit, and that's mainly from the moving debt and also trying to pay my taxes on lines of credit, basically like moving things around to try to pay as little interest as possible and get in as little trouble as possible from the government for being behind on my taxes. So if we look at that a little bit closer, my credit card debt at the moment is $673.91, but I will pay that off before the end of the month. That's just like my regular cost of living. I try not to carry a balance. I was in a lot of credit card debt when I first started my debt payoff journey, like tens of thousands of dollars. So now I try to be really, really strict with my credit cards. And then the next lowest debt that I have is $3,500 from the Best Buy financing company. So I've mentioned in other videos that my laptop was dying very fast and I work remotely. I'm self-employed. I need a laptop to be able to do my job. So I decided to buy a MacBook from Best Buy using their financing, which is 0% interest for the first year. So in my mind, I feel like, let me know in the comments if this seems like wrong, but in my mind, it's better to use this Fairstone financing and not put it on my credit card or line of credit because now I have a year of 0% interest. And by the time that year is up, I will be able to either pay it off in cash with a sinking fund that I'm going to start, or simply put it on my line of credit, which is a 5% interest rate. So it's like saving the interest for a year. Yeah. And then the next debt that I have is, oh, I just realized I didn't go in order of smallest to largest, but that's okay. The next debt that I have is $2,300 on a line of credit. That is a combination of moving debt and tax debt. I'm hoping to have that cleared by the end of this month. I picked up some extra writing work. Now that I'm back in Canada, I feel like it's easier to get certain kinds of work where it's like an hour basis kind of thing because I feel like when people see that you're living abroad, they're less likely to give you hourly work because they don't think you'll be able to stick to the 9 to 5 like time zone, like EST. So now that I'm back in Canada, I feel like it's a bit easier to get extra kind of like side work that way. But yeah, so that $2,300 should be paid off by the end of this month. Then moving on, I have a second line of credit, which is currently maxed out at $9,000. That was also moving debt. When I say that leaving Istanbul in a hurry was expensive, I'm not joking. Like, I paid lawyer fees. I had paid my rent with this line of credit because they wanted a full year of rent. I guess that's normal for foreigners. So I had some rent left over that I hadn't paid yet on this line of credit, plus the lawyer fees. I think my flight from Istanbul to Montreal was about $3,000 because it was last minute, and also because I was flying with my cat and I wanted to make sure that if I had to push the flight, I would be able to. So I paid the like highest amount that like the basically, so if you need to cancel or rebook, there's not an additional fee. So that was expensive. Then I also paid for additional luggage. So unfortunately, I lost my airline status this past year. So I did not get as many free bags as I had when I moved to Istanbul. So moving back my entire apartment, I pared down, but I still had about 6 suitcases and I had to pay for all of them, and they were all overweight as well. So that ended up being like $1,000. And then on top of that, when I came back from Istanbul, I moved to the east coast of Canada to stay with my parents for a couple of months while figuring out what to do. And then about 2 months ago now, I moved to Montreal. So that was more moving costs. So yeah, the line of credit to $9,000 is mainly moving costs. And the next debt that I have is my RRSP loan. So my financial advisor recommended that I do this when I was making more money, because when you put money into your RRSP, you pay less taxes. So it was about 5 years ago, I took out a $40,000 RRSP loan, and that got invested into the market. And then I had to pay it back. So I pay about $815 a month for that. And there's $17,000 left on it. That will be paid off in 2 years. But yeah, so my total debt and liabilities at the moment is $32,473.91, which seems bananas, but it's the lowest my debt has been in probably 5 years. And I am so excited to freaking pay this off. You have no idea. So, yeah, in total, subtracting the $32,473.91 from my investments and assets, which is $122,529.80, you have my net worth of $92,655.89, which honestly, I feel like a lot of people on YouTube are younger than me and have achieved 100K net worth. But the fact that I was so irresponsible with my money, so irresponsible with my self-employment journey and my taxes, I'm very proud of this number. And I definitely think my next update video will be for sure a six-figure net worth. So we will see. I was going to say, let me know in the comments what your net worth is, but that's very weird. So I will not say that. If you have any questions, I guess let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much. I will see you in the next one.